Hello everyone, welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the much anticipated return of the EFL Betting Show. Certainly much anticipated by me at least, and hopefully some other people out there. But we've enjoyed a little bit longer of a festive break than initially anticipated with the EFL Betting Show. There's been various factors that I won't bore you with. A little bit of staff leave, a little bit of festivities. The darts took over my life for a couple of weeks, as any subscribers to the YouTube channel will know, with the daily vlogs that kept me very busy. And then we had FA Cup more recently, didn't we, as well, Gab, last weekend. But I'm glad to say that we're back now, full float. We're going to be flying through to the end of the season, or limping through at least. Gab, it's great to have you back. Really looking forward to this weekend slate. How have you been, and did you have a nice festive period?
Yeah, I had a lovely festive period, thanks. Nice to have a bit of time to reset, but ready and raring to go for the second half of the season in the EFL, and I think it's going to be good. Yeah,
we were just saying off camera, you don't get much time to relax, do you, with the football schedule, because it is pretty constant. I mean, you get Christmas Day and then bang, you're straight in on Boxing Day. And, but I mean, still a little bit of time to recharge the battery is always good. And I think, like you say, we're at the halfway point now. The tables have all got a decent shape to them, but there's still plenty of water to pass under the bridge. And I think all three leagues in their own way are interestingly poised, particularly at certain points of the division. I don't think that in any league you could sort of nail your colours to the mast and say, I definitely know who the top 2 or 3 are going to be, which is great for the neutral. Less so if your team is in that mix and it becomes very anxious final few weeks.
Yeah. But, I would say, I don't know if you'd agree with me on this, Matt, I would say Cardiff are probably the biggest outright favourites across the EFL, because I think with Bromley in League Two, there's people who would have, 1 or 2 question marks. In the Championship, Coventry having a bit of a wobble, whereas Cardiff look possibly the most solid of the 3 leaders across the EFL at the moment.
Yeah, and I think, huge credit to Cardiff and Brian Barry Murphy's obviously doing a great job there. But I think you also would have to sort of say that it's probably the lack of sort of competition in behind. I'm struggling at League One to look at a team that I think they could really go on a great run and catch Cardiff. So I think that's not to discredit them at all, but they may just almost win it by default a little bit, because there's not a huge amount of teams that I look at stringing 6, 7, 8 wins together and really challenging them. So but like you said, the Championship looking fascinating now. Coventry flying out the blocks, but Ipswich breathing down the necks, and there's some solid teams in behind, not to be totally ruled out of things either. In League Two, take your pick.
Yeah. Well, know what? With
League Two, though, doesn't it?
With the Championship and League Two, I have my playoff scramble chats on my podcast, and I'll have to do about 5 minutes for each one, because the number of teams that are involved to get them all in and out.
I've down to about 16th wanting to be in there, haven't you? I've been there as a fan myself, though, where you're in 14th, 15th, and you're like 9 points off the playoffs, and you're thinking, if we just string a bit of a run together, So definitely. It's the hope that kills you, isn't it, in football? So
certainly is.
Yeah, let's hope that whoever you support and you're watching along, that you have a good end to the season in prospect. But if you're watching the EFL Betting Show for the first time, welcome along. We do have some new subscribers on Odds Now YouTube, so if you are tuning in, basically what we do here is myself and Gab will just take about 20 minutes, half an hour each week. We'll pick 3 selections each from across the upcoming Saturday slate. Normally 1 from the Championship, 1 from League One, 1 from League Two each. And we'll have a little bit of back and forth discussion about them. And at the end of the show, we'll round up the best bets. We'll have a point single on each of our selections and a half-point treble. Gab has been the man for the treble this year. I'm still waiting to get my first treble up. I've had 2 out of 3, an ungodly amount of times. But it's a new year, new me. I'm going straight in with 3 out of 3 this year. That's the New Year's resolution, Gab. A bit later than usual. But right, okay, I'm going to hand it over to Gab first for his first pick of the weekend. We're in the Championship. And typically, Gab, it's boom or bust with you. You either go short price or big price. You're going big price here to kick us straight off. 14-5 on Sheffield United to win to 0 here. They're away at Charlton, so it's not like a really obvious suggestion, but talk us through your thinking here.
Well, it's not an obvious suggestion if you look at the league table as it stands, because Blades are only 3 points above Charlton. So conventional logic, you might even make Charlton favourites with home advantage. The reason I've gone with Sheffield United, even though they're just above even money, is because the form table. Because if we go from mid-November's international break, Sheffield United would be top of the Championship if we put that form table together of 10 games. The Blades have taken 25 points from their last 10 games. They've won 7 of them. 22 points, sorry, I think it is, from the last 10 games. And they've scored 25 goals in that time. Whereas Charlton have only got 6 points in that time, and they've only scored 9 goals. So in terms of the form, there's a stark difference. And Chris Wilder took a bit of time to have full impact, but now he's got his teeth. Now he's got his teeth under the desk. He's got his feet under the desk.
Okay,
I'm not sure getting your teeth under the desk would be very hygienic. It's not recommended. But I think they're very different teams in very different places. So that's why I've gone with Sheffield United. And if you want to go with the goals angle, where Charlton have struggled for goals recently, I wouldn't put you off that. So you can either go with the Sheffield United win at 11-10 or the win to nil at 14-5 for a bit of a chunkier price.
Yeah, I definitely see the thinking with Sheffield United here, and I think at the start of the season there would have been a bit of trepidation about taking Charlton on at home. You know, where we were expecting them to be a real force. They certainly were in League One. They've just played Chelsea in the FA Cup. I kind of had high hopes for Nathan Jones rallying them and making a real game of that. And they ended up getting sort of tonked, didn't they, 4 or 5-1 at the end. What's your feeling on where Charlton are at the moment, Gab? Are you worried about the recent form? Or?
A little bit. I think it depends a lot on what they can do in the remainder of the January window. I think they've been very short at left wing back this season, which has made them look a little bit imbalanced. And so I think that it's been kind of a case of limbering over to line into the January window for them, because they definitely need some players to freshen up their squad. Whereas I think Sheffield United, everyone you talk to is saying they're playing really well at the moment. And I do wonder if there's going to be a bit of muscle memory from last season going to click back in, certainly if they can strengthen their squad. So that's why I'm fancying the Babes. But for Charlton, yes, I wonder if they could be in that relegation equation.
Well, time will tell. Like we say, it's only halfway and there's a lot can change in the coming months. So fingers crossed that Charlton don't get sucked into that trouble. But Gab is predicting a tough day at the office for them against an informed and improving Sheffield United. Blades to win to nil is 14-5 best price with BetVictor. Over to me then for my championship selection. I'm going to go with one of the season's surprise packages here, Preston. I'm going to get them in. I'm quite a conservative angle in terms of the matches. I'm going to back them double chance against Derby, but under 2.5 goals is the main crux of this bet. And that sort of, just on their own, Preston double chance would be around 1-3, under 2.5 goals would be around 4-7, and they combine towards an even money shot. The thinking with this one is largely, it's just, I'm very, very impressed with the way Preston continue to dumbfound critics, really. And you can't give enough credit to the operation that's gone on this season at Deepdale. I don't think anybody gave them a prayer of being a playoff team. And they've been here before, Preston. Obviously, they had their relegation and their period in League One. And that was a period where I actually lived in Preston for university. And I was in and around the city at that time. And it felt like a club that was too big to be in League One. But they had this issue at the time where the ownership, every time they sort of threatened to do something in the Championship, there just wasn't the funds there to invest and to kick them on. And all these years later, we're here again in a January window where you think if they could just find a bit of money to go and bring in 2 or 3 more, they have a real chance of sustaining themselves and finally getting into those Championship playoffs for the first time in an awful long time. But I would have my reservations about whether they're going to do that business in January. And, you know, I think most people would probably have Preston maybe in that sort of 6th, 7th, 8th mould, maybe just slipping out at the last minute again, which would be a real shame for their fans. But I do think we've seen enough of Preston over this season to really trust them, particularly at home, to kind of control a game, play it on their terms, and give themselves the best possible chance of getting a result here. Now, I'm not necessarily anti-Derby. I think Derby have been decent in patches this season. But when I look into both the results of both teams, goals, generally, there's a lot of low-scoring encounters. When they have scored goals, it's been like the odd 5-goal, 6-goal game. The general trend is low-scoring games here. And the reason I wanted to do the double chance is because 1-1 scorelines have been very prevalent for both teams this season as well. Derby have had 7 1-1 draws. Preston have had 6 and a couple of 0-0s. So low-scoring draws are a common theme for both of these clubs. But this, to me, has the feeling of a game that Preston will control for as much as they can. I mean, they don't really control the ball, but they control the way that they want to play the games. And that's why they've been so successful this season. And I think the game will be played on their terms. I think Derby will sit in and hope to try and pick them off. And when I look at the potential scorelines in this game, it feels like a 1-0 Preston or a 1-1. It's very, very likely. And I just really like all the different outs that I get here. I get the 1-0, the 2-0, the 1-1 and the 0-0 all on side. When you're looking at that game, that feels like the likeliest scoreline to me. So even money, happy to have them 4 scorelines on side here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Preston North End have recruited very well this season. When you look at Thierry Small, Odila Fire, Alfie Devine in midfield, Harrison Armstrong as well, who Derby fans will be familiar with, was fantastic for them in the second half of last season. I think he's taken that form. In fact, I think Everton might have recalled him actually, but it just
he has. I hope they can get him back because he's been great. But I think Moyes is just having a little look at him, which is fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it shows how good a job Paul Heckingbottom has done, and we're probably looking at two of the best performing managers in the Championship. When you look at managers who can get value out of their squads, and John Eustace has obviously done that really well with Derby, but Heckingbottom this season is certainly delivering the goods. So I like this one. It's sort of favouring P&E, but you're also giving yourself a lot of flexibility whilst also getting enough specificity with the under 22.5s to give yourself a decent enough price. So I like that one.
Good endorsement from Gab. Always makes me feel better about my selections. It's like getting a pat on the head from your dad after doing well at football training.
Well done, son.
Thank you. Anyway, we'll press on into League One now, and hopefully I can get another pat on the head. But first, it's Gab's selection, and it's Plymouth double chance against Peterborough. These are two sides who dreadful starts to the season, Gab. Yeah. It's fair to say. I was worried about both of these potentially getting, sucked into the relegation mire. Peterborough have certainly improved their position in recent times, but I think Plymouth, although the table maybe misleads a little bit, I think they are on the improved, Plymouth. And I don't actually, if you're asking me right now, I think they'll have enough to sort of finish mid-table, but interested to hear your thoughts on this, Gab, because it is a game where if we'd looked at this game 2 or 3 months ago, it would have been a completely different sort of chat we've had, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take a little bit of credit for Plymouth Argyle's rise up the table, because I did an interview with Derek Adams when he was out of work around September, October time. And apparently that was one of the hierarchy at Plymouth Argyle actually watched that interview, and it was one of the factors behind them bringing back Derek Adams as director of football. And since Adams has returned in a kind of advisory capacity to Tom Cleverley, their form has gone right up the table. So certainly think that that Adams has had a bit of an influence, as well as you've got to give Tom Cleverley a lot of credit as well himself. But I think there's definitely a solidity now about Argyle. They've gone back to a sort of compact shape, and they've made themselves a lot hard to score against. They've kept a lot of clean sheets over the last 2 or 3 months, and I think that's helped them rise up the table. And they've definitely stopped losing as many games. So they've certainly stopped the rot, and that's one of the reasons why I would be. I sort of feel as though the traders, there's only a 5-point difference in terms of the points totals that these two teams have, but the traders seem to be a little bit biased in favour of Peterborough because they've scored a lot of goals under their sort of change of form, whereas Argyle, it's been more about the clean sheets. But I'm not sure that I would make Peterborough odds-on favourites. If I was pricing it up, it would be more like 11 to 10, 13 to 10, something up 6 to 5, that kind of mark. So I think Argyle are a little bit underrated, even though I respect Peterborough and the rise they've had under Luke Williams.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's like always hard to judge these when it's two sort of upwardly mobile teams who were both probably playing below expectations beforehand as well. So I think this improvement, we shouldn't be massively surprised by this improvement. I think both teams have quality in the ranks and stuff. So, they will always have the potential to click into gear, if you will. But yeah, for me, Plymouth, I think it's very easy to forget that this was a squad that was deemed sort of at the start of the season to be like in the title contention.
Yeah, well, I think I had them just outside the playoffs.
Yeah, well, you were probably more accurate than a lot, because a lot of people had Plymouth sort of second, third, didn't they, or even in the title mix. And you don't become that bad a group of players overnight. There's obviously factors that drag you into a losing run. There's been changes at the club as well in the hierarchy and managing and what have you. But if they do start playing more towards their potential and what was expected of them at the start of the season, then we're dealing with a really decent team here. And like I agree with you. I think that Posh have been great in the last few weeks. Am I yet ready to get with them at odds on? Not yet, no. Particularly against a side like Plymouth, who are also on the improve as well, and have plenty of quality as well that can take advantage. I mean, Tolai, I feel like I've waxed lyrical about Tolai on this show many times, but he's a quality player for this level. And he gives you a real chance, particularly away from home, where having a physical presence up front to just help you out a little bit, but also someone so skillful as well. I'm going to try and not go on another sort of 5-minute ramble about how good Laurent Tolai is, but go on. It's tempting. But yeah, in all seriousness, Gab, I'm struggling to argue with it. I'd certainly rather be with Plymouth and the draw rather than Peterborough. So hard to argue with that one there. Okay, my pick in League One is Barnsley and Blackpool, two teams who are probably not hitting the heights their fans would have hoped for this season. Blackpool, Did have a little bit of improvement when the arrival of club legend Ian Evatt into the dugout, but I think in slightly more recent times, things have just took a bit of a backward step, and any hopes about them maybe pushing on towards a late playoff push, the kind of playoff push we talked about at the start of the show, where a team a mile away, they get a bit of a run going and they start to dream. I think that's maybe just giving them a little bit of a reality check, certainly with regards to this season, of the work that needs to be done to get Blackpool back sort of challenging in League One. And I think initially for this season, they just need to be concerned about not getting dragged into the relegation battle, because it is so tight at the bottom still. We talked about Plymouth, though. You just talked about Plymouth there, Gab. Their win last week took them from 27 points to 30 points, and it lifted them 6 places. So it's incredibly tight at the bottom half of League One. So, yeah, I think Blackpool, I do have my concerns about them, particularly in the short term, because Evatt continues to play this 3 at the back, centre halves. We know how he likes to play. And to my understanding, they don't really have the centre back options to be playing this right now, partly due to injury. I think Fraser Horsfall's out for 8 weeks or something with a hamstring problem, which is a massive blow. Now, they've just brought in a centre-back on loan from Millwall, haven't they? Grant.
So on Kamal Grant, yes.
I can't say I know loads about him.
He's a 6'5" lad who was part of Bromley's promotion from the National League. I think he played for them last season.
I did wonder if it was the same one that was at Bromley. That was the one I was thinking of. But regardless, I'm willing to trust Ian Evatt can find a good defender, because he was a pretty good defender himself. So I reckon he knows what he wants from that position. However, still, this is a time process. I've always felt it with Blackpool when Evatt came in, and I think you did as well, Gab. It's not going to be an overnight thing. Yes, they had an uptick in results that you would expect with any club bringing a new manager in, but ultimately, if you're so trying to dig out and start a new style of play, and you don't have the personnel for key positions, there are going to be problems. And we have seen Blackpool have been very vulnerable at the back under Ian Evatt, bar a little 2 or 3 game run. And they've been. I think they were. Was it Port Vale? They were 1-0 up, went down to 10 men, ended up losing 5-1.
Yes, that's correct.
And the wheels completely came off that night, and Evatt kind of blamed it on the referee. But I thought, well, there's a few other problems apart from the referee, isn't there, when you're shipping 5 at Port Vale, who I believe were bottom of the league at the time. So so just a few worrying signs for me in terms of Blackpool in the short term, that defensively, as much as Grant coming in on loan, and I'm sure he's a good player, is still going to be an adjustment. It's a very specific type of playing out from the back, high pressure. Coming into the back of this game off 3 losses. And Barnsley, don't get me wrong, Barnsley have not hit the heights this season. Mid-table, I don't really have any sort of belief that they're going to push themselves into that playoff picture this season.
But they do, just on that though, Matt, they do have some really good individual players like Reyes Cleary, who stood out at Anfield. Someone said he was better than Cody Gakpo. You've got Davis Keeler-Dunn, who's been one of the top goal scorers in it. So I think, just to amplify your point there, they've got players who can help them score 2, 3, 4 goals.
Exactly my thinking, Gab. If there's one thing I would say about Barnsley, is they have the quality in attacking areas to punish a team that are struggling defensively. Massive fan of Keeler-Dunn as well at this level. I think we've still not seen the best. Well, I think he could do even more at this level. Very, very good player. So I just, my defensive concerns about Blackpool, the forward quality of Barnsley, even though they got smashed against Liverpool at the FA Cup, it still feel like they came out of that game in good spirits. They played some really good football, got a lot of praise externally for the way they went about themselves. The fans still had a great time despite the result. And now,
and that's probably not far off the best case scenario when you're going to Anfield as a League One club, is it? So
exactly, you just want to. I mean, look what happened to poor old Exeter at Manchester City, and you just want to give a decent account of yourselves, don't you? And they definitely did that. So I think spirits as high as they could be here. Good forward options against the team I've got massive defensive reservations about in the short term. So Barnsley to score more than 1 goal effectively is even money here. I did think about both teams to score an over 2.5 goals, because Blackpool are quite good for a goal themselves. They've got informed forward in Ashley Fletcher, obviously. But I just thought it was easy. There were similar prices. I thought it was easier to just focus on Barnsley here. So Barnsley over 1.5 goals against Blackpool, even money is my pick here. Okay, well, we'll move on to League Two then to finish things off this week, and then we'll have a summary of best bets, so do stay tuned for that. Gab, over to you first in League Two. Salford and Swindon. This is an interesting game between 2 teams who are right in the mix for promotion. Before we go into your best bet here, which you can see on the screen is going to be Salford draw no bet, but I just want to ask you a little bit about Swindon in midweek. Obviously, in the EFL Trophy, suffered this horrendous administrative error. For anyone who doesn't know, where they've brought on Aaron Drinan as a substitute, and he wasn't listed in the matchday squad due to an error submitting the team sheet onto an iPad. So they've now got this worry of being kicked out or whatever, even though they beat Luton. How can that still be allowed to happen in this day and age, Gab? Because I just read that story and just thought that's crazy, really.
Yeah, it's a surprising story, isn't it?
Because you've got all the officials, haven't you, there? Kind of, they're aware of the team sheet. How's the fourth official not checked? He's in the squad.
Yeah, I think it's probably more of a thing where I would criticise the officials. I think for clubs, an administrative mistake can happen. I think it's maybe more of a thing that you'd have to level at the officials, because they're the ones who are responsible for keeping everything organised. So that's how I feel about that situation.
Yeah, it's a shame, because obviously it mars what was a great result for Swindon as well. But anyway, they're taking on Salford in the league action this week. And as I say, both teams will have high hopes of potential promotion pushes this season. They're certainly well positioned to do so. You're going with Salford here, the draw no bet. You're still getting odds against taking the money back for a draw. Tell us why you're leaning with Salford here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the timing of this fixture could favour Salford, because Swindon have, there's a situation you mentioned. There's obviously a situation with Ollie Clark still sort of rumbling on. And also, Swindon have just lost Finley Munro, their influential wing-back, who's been a bit of an assist king for this season with the quality of his deliveries and cutbacks. And he's been recalled by Aston Villa and then sold to Middlesbrough. And I do wonder sometimes, when the wing-backs are really important to how a team plays, when you lose a really big one, not got much time to get in the replacement, I think that could affect Swindon. But it's also because I'm a really big fan of Salford City, and I actually think this kind of game is going to suit them. I saw Salford play away at Barnet just before Christmas, and they did look like a team who, although they didn't have too many attacks in terms of volume, they did have that thing where when they come forward, might be 5 or 6 occasions in a game, they look like they can cut their opponents open. And I think in Callum Cisse, Kelly and Mai, who's a very effervescent player who can get in behind very quickly, and Danilo, who's like a bit of a mobile target man, got that selflessness to his game, but he's also scored a few goals as well. That trio, combined with being a team that likes to play forward quickly and incisively and get that one-touch football going against maybe more of a possession side like Swindon, who are a little bit limited in terms of numbers this season, could be quite open as well. I'm fancying Salford now. There was a 4-7 double chance, but I've decided not to go for 2 double chances in my selection. So I've gone with a draw no bet, which gives you odds.
The people that do watch this show will be disappointed there. They love a Gab Sutton double chance. You've gone for a more ambitious price. I like it.
Yeah, I've gone for a little bit of a chunkier price, just a shade of odds against. I've gone Salford draw no bet, so the stake's going to be returned if the game ends elsewhere. But I think with Salford and the threat they can pose on the counter-attack, I think this is the kind of game that could suit them. So I'm happy to go with that at odds against.
Yeah, definitely won't have too many arguments from me. They're in fantastic form, Salford. And, like it's easy to look at the table. I think they've got the worst goal difference in the top half, actually, Salford, only +4. But you made a good case from there. They've just got so many different, I really, really like the options that they've got, Salford. They're just there's so many ways they can unpick you. And Swindon, you're right, there's a lot rumbling on. They did make an interesting signing, I thought. Was it young Fletcher Holman?
Yes, from Wolves. Yeah, he scored a lot of goals in there.
Terrific record in youth football. Really, really looking forward to seeing what Ian Holloway can do with him. And I did see Ian Holloway talking about their Swindon's recruitment last week, and he just couldn't praise the club enough with the way they were trying to approach the recruitment. So hopefully that is the first, from a Swindon perspective, the first exciting signing of many coming in the door for them. And I would be encouraged hearing that kind of thing as a Robins fan. I must admit, I was sceptical about Ian Holloway. After what happened at Grimsby, but take my hat off to him. He's doing a great job. He's fond of a hat as well, isn't he, Ian Holloway?
I was just going to say, yeah.
You've got to give him credit, haven't you? I did have question marks, but he's done really, really well since coming in there. I expect both of these sides to be bang there in terms of pushing for an automatic berth. And if not, if one of them slip into the playoffs, I could well see a world where I'm favouring them to win the playoffs. 2 teams I like. You made a good case there for Salford, and with the draw no bet odds against, I don't think there's a lot between them. So I definitely think you're probably on the right side of it price wise there, Gavin. Just need a little bit of luck. So all the best with that one. Well, I'm going to sign things off this week with a much more ambitious play, and there is a word of caution here that this one could end up being a void bet, because I don't know if Danilo Oris is going to go straight in for Crawley. We shall see. With an anytime goal scorer bet, it's worth just saying that if a goal is scored before they come on, it's normally void for substitutes. But there are other bookmakers where if they play a minute, it's a valid bet. So just make sure you're checking the rules if you are backing it with your various bookmakers. It does vary from bookmaker to bookmaker, but it's just a player that I'm keen to get with. I think I've talked up on the show before. The reason that I think obviously he's had this great season 2 years ago with Crawley, top scorer in the league, promotion, scored the winner at Wembley, all this kind of stuff. So that was a fairy tale, but he hasn't had a great 2 years since. He returns to Crawley now. He returns to work with Scott Lindsay now. Sometimes a player just fits a club perfectly. And I think this is one of those cases. Just to have a little bit more of a look at actually what's happened with Orsi in the last couple of years. He openly said he didn't want to leave Crawley. He didn't want to leave Crawley after the promotion. But what happened that summer with Crawley is there was like a fire sale, wasn't there, where every saleable asset was sort of dispersed of. It was like when somebody dies and leaves all the possession in the house and it goes to auction, they just take whatever they can for it. It was. So he ended up going to MK Dons, the idea being that he would link up with former bosses.
Well, Burton Albion, I think.
Burton, of course. Yeah, and he didn't do too badly, but it didn't really work out there. He then goes to MK Dons with Scott Lindsay, excited to link up with Lindsay again. Lindsay lasts about 4 games and then gets the boot, and he finds himself in with a manager who doesn't really fancy him that much. He then gets a good move to League One with AFC Wimbledon, and it's not really worked for him there. But equally, I would say that he's had 20, if you look at the raw statistics, he's had 22 odd appearances. Only 8 of them have been starts, and he scored 3 goals in 8 starts. So I would probably argue he hasn't had much of a crack there. Now he comes back to a place he refers to as home, and just says he feels so comfortable there, knows the club, knows the players, knows the manager. And this is a guy who's shown he can score 20 plus goals in League Two. I think it's the perfect signing for Crawley at this time because they have looked a little bit, I don't know, just disjointed in attack at times this season. I quite like a couple of the players on their books in terms of producing goals. Like Harry McCurdy is obviously a bit of a controversial character, but he can score. Not a bad target man for the level, but I just think Orsi he's probably a cut above, isn't he? And if he gets back to anywhere near his best, I would not be surprised to see him get close to double figures between now and the end of the season. And I think that in this market right now, he's priced as the 8th most likely player to score in this game. I think if he goes on the pitch, he's the 2nd or 3rd most likely player to score behind like maybe Matty Dennis at Notts County and and Jatta, and that's about it. That's the caliber of forward we're talking at for this level. So I just think at the prices, if this price holds, I'll probably back him from 2 or 3 weeks because I don't think it'd be long with Lindsay at the helm. Back to Crawley, that he's among the goals again.
I think with centre forwards, it's so important that the way the team plays suits their main strengths, because although Orsi's 6'2", he's not really that kind of physical target man type. He's much more giving the ball to feet around the edge of the box, and he can create his chances or finish from cutbacks and things like that. And I actually think he'll get that at Crawley. Now, I've got some numbers for you, because Crawley on the data, their top half. I know, I've done the research, mate. Crawley are top half on chance creation, so they should, in theory, have scored 37 goals based on the volume of chances that they've created, and they've actually scored 28. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there, but what it suggests to me is that they've been creating chances because they are a tidy footballing side under Scott Lindsay that always seem to have a good half of football in them. But in Ryan Lough and Kabongo Chimanga, they've maybe not had that cutting edge at top, whereas I think Orsi is the one who would suit how they play and who can finish chances. And I think under a manager who's already got the best out of him, I expect them to go well. So I think we're going to back Orsi to come flying out the traps.
Oh, well, that's terrible. But I'm glad you managed to ram one in because it was getting a bit late in the day and we hadn't had a terrible one, had we? So you've nicked in at the death. You've only further boosted my confidence with that one, Gab. I just think the price is way too big as well. He's been priced more like a midfielder there to me, but this is like a cutting edge centre forward. If he and he tried to follow Lindsay to MK Dons, it didn't work out from there. He'll definitely get a run of games under him here, and you only have to go and watch his interview returning to the club. You'll see the happiness beaming out of the man. He's so pleased to be there, and I think that is so important for a centre forward, particularly when you've had a rough few years and you just want to get back to playing and enjoying your football. It just looks like a match made in heaven for me. I hope he stays injury free, gets a good run of games, and we start seeing him firing some goals in this weekend, starting with one against Notts County, please, Danilo. That will do me lovely. Okay, so that rounds up this week's EFL Betting Show, and I will bring some snazzy graphics onto the screen now to show you what our best bets are for this week. So, Gab, you've gone for Sheffield United win 2-0 against Charlton at just shy of 3-1 with BetVictor. You're taking Plymouth double chance against Peterborough, and you're backing Salford draw no bet against Swindon. So tell us what your best bet is out of those three, please, Gab.
I think I'll go with I'll play it safe and go with the Argyle double chance at Peterborough at evens, because I think that gives you covered nicely for that one. So that'll be my pick.
Certainly does. Yeah, I can't lie. I quite like all of them, but I would probably lean towards Plymouth as well. Yeah, I do like it. The double chance. I think you're right. Maybe a bit of market overreaction to Peterborough's improvement versus Plymouth's similar level of improvement, even if results aren't quite as impressive right now. Well, my 3 selection, I'm going to go for Preston, double chance against Derby, so Preston to win or draw, and up to 2.5 goals in the game at 21-20 with Betway. Barnsley over 1.5 goals against a leaky Blackpool defence, even money, and Danilo Oris, anytime goal scorer for Crawley against Notts County at just under 3-1 with Betway. The treble, which we both have half a point on our respective trebles for our profit and loss. Mine is just under 14-1 with Betway, and Gab's, yours was 12.5-1 with Bet365. Gab, if I was making you if I was forcing you to have a bet on one of my games, which I would never do, obviously, but if you were, what would your favourite of my 3 select?
I'm just trying to picture you getting me in the dungeon.
Place it.
Exactly. And I would say Preston double chance versus Derby and under 2.5 goals, because I think you get some nice cover and a few outs in that one, as you said, but also just over even money. So odds against. So I like that one.
Yeah, I must say I do as well, to be honest. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, but you get 0-0, 1-1, 1-0 and 2-0 to Preston, all on side there with an odds against poke. So yeah, I think that's good value there. But anyway, we'll see how we go. Gab, thanks for joining me again on this week's show. Great to be back at it. It's been a pleasure and an enjoyable episode. If you have watched for the first time and enjoyed it, please do give us a thumb up and comment in the section below with what your best bets are for this weekend. Me and Gab will be back next week to do it all over again. Please do gamble responsibly, and we'll see you soon again on Odds Now.